The door stayed locked. Sarah Brennan stood in the frozen mud outside Dalton's general store, her breath clouding white in the February dawn. Behind her, 3 boys huddled close. Daniel, 12 years old, in a coat 2 sizes too small. Jacob, 9, clutching the coin purse with mittened hands. Samuel, 6, his boot sole flapping open, tied shut with kitchen twine. Other townspeople arrived. Mrs. Henderson, the Reese brothers, young Tom from the mill. Dalton unlocked the door for each of them, nodding, ushering them inside with a smile that never reached his eyes. When Sarah stepped forward, Dalton met her gaze through the glass. Then he reached up, slow and deliberate, and flipped the sign to closed. Jacob whispered, "Mama, why won't he hush now?" Sarah's voice stayed level. She turned, leading them back toward the muddy street, across the square. The church bell rang. People gathered on the steps, their Sunday clothes dark against the snow. Reverend Clayton stood at the top, Bible under one arm, the other raised like a prophet. "Good people of Mercy Creek," he called out, voice carrying in the cold air. "There are those among us who defy the natural order. A woman without a man's guidance is a danger to herself and her children." Sarah kept walking, spine straight, but Samuel's hand tightened in hers. "Sarah Brennan's family," Clayton continued, "is unwelcome in this house of God until she repents her obstinacy and accepts proper guidance." Faces turned. Some looked away. Others stared. Mouths tight with judgment or pity, Sarah couldn't tell which, and didn't care to know. Across the square, a man stood beside a young girl, maybe 8 years old. He was tall, shoulders broad beneath a worn coat, hat pulled low. But Sarah saw his hands, fists clenched at his sides, knuckles white. Their eyes met for 1 second. Something passed between them. Recognition. Maybe. The kind 2 castaways give each other in a storm. Then Sarah turned away, leading her sons toward the wilderness road that stretched 5 miles to their homestead. Behind her, Clayton's voice faded into the wind. "Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall." Samuel stumbled. The twine on his boot had come loose. Sarah knelt in the frozen mud, retying it with stiff fingers. "Mama," Daniel said quietly, "how long till we can go back to town?" Sarah finished the knot. She stood, brushing ice from her skirt. "We don't need their town. Daniel, we have each other." But when she looked back one last time, the tall man was still watching. The girl held his hand, her face turned up to his, asking some question Sarah couldn't hear. The man nodded to her, a small gesture, almost invisible. Sarah nodded back. Then she walked her sons into the cold. 3 days later, the firewood ran out. Sarah stood in the cabin doorway, watching Daniel trudge back from the tree line empty-handed. His rifle hung loose in one hand, his face red with cold and shame. "Nothing," he said, not meeting her eyes, not even tracks. Inside, Jacob stirred the pot over the dying fire, 1 rabbit bone, the last of the beans. "Enough for tonight. Maybe tomorrow would take care of itself, or it wouldn't." Samuel sat by the window, pressing his small hand against the frost patterns on the glass. Sarah ladled thin soup into 4 bowls. They ate in silence. Hoofbeats broke the quiet just after sunset. Sarah grabbed the rifle, motioned the boys back. Through the window she saw 3 riders and a loaded wagon. The lead horse was black. Expensive. She recognized the man in the saddle before he called out. Warren Kent, land baron, owner of half the valley. "Mrs. Brennan," he called, voice smooth as new leather. "Might we have a word?" Sarah stepped onto the porch, rifle across her chest. Not aimed. Not yet. Kent dismounted, gestured to the wagon. Flour sacks, salt pork, blankets, even a crate of canned goods. "I heard about your difficulties." Kent said. His smile showed too many teeth. "I'm a reasonable man. I can help. He pulled a paper from his coat. Sign this, and your boys eat through spring. Refuse, and I file foreclosure on your land taxes come April, $200. Sarah, you don't have it. Sarah's jaw tightened. And what's the paper say? Marriage contract. Simple terms. You become Mrs. Kent. Your sons get a father. Your debts disappear. Behind her. Daniel's breath caught. Sarah lowered the rifle, stepped forward until she stood eye to eye with Kent. I'd rather chop my furniture for firewood, she said. Voice quiet and sharp as a blade. Then sign my life to a man who'd weaponize hunger against children. Kent's smile didn't waver. 3 days, Sarah. Then I file the claim. He nodded to his men. They unloaded the supplies in the snow, not charity, but bait. Then they rode into the darkness. Sarah stood shaking, not from cold, but rage. Daniel's hand found her shoulder. Mama, we'll manage, she said. We always do. But that night, she lay awake counting the coins in the jar. $43. Not enough. Not nearly enough. Dawn came gray and silent. Then hoofbeats again, but different. Slower. A single horse pulling a smaller wagon. The man from the church square. He climbed down, started unloading flour, nails, timber, salt pork. The girl helped him, her small arms struggling with a burlap sack. Sarah stepped onto the porch. I won't be another charity case. The man paused, turned, up close. His face was weathered. Kind. Maybe 38, 40. Eyes the color of storm clouds. Not charity, ma'am. Your land needs a barn before spring planting. I need work. Your boys can learn carpentry while we build. We trade labor, fair exchange. And what do you want in return? He glanced at the girl. To teach my daughter Emma that standing by good people is worth more than standing with easy people. Sarah studied him. His hands were calloused, honest. His eyes didn't slide away. What's your name? Wyatt Cole, widower, new to Mercy Creek, though I'm guessing that's changing fast. Despite herself, Sarah almost smiled. Sarah Brennan, also widowed, also unwelcome. Wyatt nodded. Then we understand each other. He extended his hand, after a moment. Sarah shook it. Behind her. Samuel peeked through the doorway. Emma waved. Samuel ducked back. Shy but curious. That afternoon, Warren Kent's foreman rode past on the road. He slowed his horse, stared at Wyatt unloading timber, then spurred away fast. By sunset, the whole town would know the stranger had taken up with the outcast widow. Sarah watched Wyatt measure ground for the foundation. Chalk lines stretched tight. You know what you're doing? She asked. Taking my side. Wyatt hammered a stake into the frozen earth. A man's word is his bond, ma'am. Out here. You measure a person by what they do when the storm comes, not what they say when the sun's shining. Sarah nodded slowly. Then I suppose we'd better get to work. Inside. Daniel watched from the window. Arms crossed. Jacob grinned. Samuel pressed his hand to the glass again, but this time, Emma stood on the other side, matching her palm to his. For the first time in months, Sarah felt something like hope. Sunday morning, the church bell rang across Mercy Creek. Wyatt Cole sat in the back pew, Emma beside him, her small hand folded in his. The sanctuary smelled of old wood and candle wax. Families filled the rows, Sunday clothes pressed, hats removed. Faces turned toward Reverend Clayton at the pulpit. Clayton opened his Bible. His voice filled the room, deep and certain. There are those among us, he began, who consort with the obstinate, who lead children astray by example. Wyatt's jaw tightened. Mr. Cole. Clayton's eyes locked on him. You've been seen aiding a woman who defies God's order. I urge you to reconsider your associations. For the sake of your daughter. The congregation turned. 60 faces, 60 judgments. Emma's hand trembled. Wyatt squeezed gently, whispered, "It's all right, sweetheart." But it wasn't all right. It was the moment he'd been dreading since Mary died. The moment when silence became complicity. He thought of Mary Beautiful. Kind Mary shunned by her own family for marrying beneath her station. He thought of her dying in childbirth because the doctor refused to come to poor folk. He thought of burying her alone under a cottonwood tree because decent people wouldn't let him use the church cemetery. He'd been silent then, broken and silent. Not anymore. Wyatt stood. Emma looked up, eyes wide. The church went quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with held breath. "Reverend," Wyatt said, voice steady. "If helping a widow and her sons is a sin, then I'm proud to sin. And if this town's got no room for Sarah Brennan's family," he took Emma's hand, helped her stand, "then it's got no room for mine either." He walked toward the door. Slow. Deliberate. Every step an answer. At the threshold. He paused, turned back. "So do I," he said. The words hung in the air like smoke. Then he walked out, Emma's hand in his, into the cold morning light. Behind the church, hidden by a bare oak tree, Sarah Brennan had been standing the whole time. She'd come to listen, not to enter. Now tears froze on her cheeks. She watched Wyatt lift Emma onto his horse, swing up behind her. He saw Sarah then, standing in the shadows. Their eyes met. He tipped his hat. Sarah nodded, unable to speak. Then Wyatt rode toward her homestead, and Sarah followed on foot. 5 miles through the snow. By afternoon, Wyatt was marking ground for the barn foundation. Daniel watched from the cabin window, arms crossed, face unreadable. Jacob came outside, curious. "What are you building?" "A barn," Wyatt said. "Your mama's land needs one. Thought your family could use the help." "We don't need charity." "Good, neither do I. I need skilled hands. You willing to learn?" Jacob hesitated, then nodded. Samuel ventured out next, clutching a small stick. He stood beside Wyatt, watching, then mimicked the way Wyatt measured with the chalk line. Wyatt crouched down. "You got a good eye, son. Want to help me mark the corners?" Samuel looked back at his mother in the doorway. Sarah nodded. The boy took the chalk, hands shaking, and helped Wyatt mark the ground. Inside, Daniel turned away from the window, but Sarah saw the tightness in his shoulders ease. Just a fraction. That evening, she opened the cabin door. "Supper's at 6 if you're staying. You eat with us." Wyatt looked up from the stakes he'd driven into the earth. "Much obliged, ma'am." "Sarah," she corrected. "If we're partners, you call me Sarah. Then you call me Wyatt." She almost smiled. Fair exchange. Inside, the table was small, meant for 4, not 6, but they made it work. Venison stew, cornbread, the last of the preserves. Emma sat beside Samuel, whispering something that made him giggle. Jacob peppered Wyatt with questions about carpentry. Daniel ate in silence, but he didn't leave the table. Sarah watched them. These 6 people crowded together, elbows touching, warmth filling the small room. Outside, wolves howled in the distance. Inside, the fire held. The barn rose log by log. 3 weeks passed. Late February gave way to early March. The snow began to melt, leaving mud and cold rain. But the foundation stood solid. Wyatt taught Daniel to splice rope, taking frayed lengths, weaving them together until they held stronger than new. "Broken things can be made strong again, son," he said, hands working the fibers. "You just got to know where to tie the knot." Daniel didn't answer, but he watched closely. Later, Sarah found him in the barn practicing, fingers clumsy but determined. Jacob and Emma became inseparable. They collected kindling, chased chickens, built snow forts that collapsed into laughter. Samuel followed them everywhere, humming softly the first sounds he'd made since his father died. One afternoon, old Moses Red rode up the path on a sway-backed mare. He was 70 if he was a day, back bent, hands gnarled from decades at the forge, but his eyes were sharp. He dismounted slow, pulled a burlap sack from his saddlebag. Nails, a bag of oats, a tin of lard. Heard you folks were building something. Moses said, "Thought you could use these?" Sarah stepped forward. "Moses, we can't." "Didn't ask if you could. I'm offering." He looked at Wyatt, then back at Sarah. "I know what it's like to be cast out for doing right. Defended a native family once. Town never forgave me." He shrugged. "Their loss." He stayed for supper. Told stories that made the children laugh, tales of ornery horses and stubborn anvils. Of the time he accidentally shoot a mule backward and it walked in circles for a week. Even Daniel cracked a smile. After Moses left, Sarah stood on the porch watching the old man ride away into the dusk. Wyatt joined her. Good people still exist. Just harder to find. Sarah said, "In town." Warren Kent heard the reports. He paced his ranch house office, jaw tight. His foreman stood by the door. "They're still building," the foreman said. "Got that old blacksmith helping them now." Kent slammed his hand on the desk. "Then we remind Mrs. Brennan what happens when she forgets her place." He pulled out a ledger. "Her land taxes, $200, due in 6 weeks. He looked up. "Make sure the bank manager knows I want it called in. No extensions." The foreman nodded and left. Kent stood at the window, watching the distant mountains. "She'll come crawling back," he muttered. "They always do." At the homestead, late into the night, Sarah and Wyatt worked by lantern light. The barn walls were half-framed. Canvas stretched overhead for temporary shelter. Their hands brushed, reaching for the same hammer. Both pulled back. Sarah cleared her throat. "You didn't have to sacrifice your standing in this town for us." Wyatt set down the hammer. "I didn't sacrifice anything. I chose something." "What's the difference?" "Sacrifice sounds like loss. Choice sounds like freedom." He met her eyes. "I'm exactly where I want to be." The lantern flickered. Outside. The wind picked up. "I'm scared," Sarah said quietly. "That I'm not enough. That I'm failing them." Wyatt stepped closer. "You're not failing. You're fighting. There's a difference." "Is there?" "Yeah." His voice softened. "Failing is giving up. Fighting is what you do every morning when you wake up and keep going." Sarah's throat tightened. "I don't know how much longer I can keep going." "Then lean on me when you can't. That's what partners do." They stood in the dim light, the space between them charged with something unnamed. Then Emma's voice called from the cabin, "Papa, Samuel's having a bad dream." The moment broke. Wyatt stepped back, nodded, and headed inside. Sarah stayed in the barn, hands shaking. She pressed her palms against the rough timber, feeling the splinters and strength. Good timber don't grow easy. Her father used to say, "The stronger the wind, the tougher the tree." She hoped he was right. The blizzard came without warning. One moment, the sky was gray and still. The next, wind screamed across the valley. Snow falling so thick Sarah couldn't see the barn from the cabin door. "Everyone inside," Wyatt shouted, hauling Samuel up. Daniel grabbed Emma's hand. Jacob bolted for the cabin, Sarah right behind. The door slammed shut. Wind rattled the shutters. Snow piled against the walls like a living thing, burying them. For 2 days, they were trapped. Wyatt reinforced the shutters with spare timber. Sarah rationed the food half portions, then less. The children didn't complain, but their eyes grew hollow. At night, huddled by the fire, Emma and Samuel began a ritual, Mama's in heaven now, Emma whispered. But I think she can still hear me. Samuel nodded. My papa, too. Mama says he's sleeping. But I think... He paused, voice small. I think he's with your mama now. Emma took his hand. Then they're not alone. No, Samuel said. They're not alone. Sarah, listening from across the room, felt something crack inside her chest. That night, when the children finally slept, she sat by the fire with Wyatt. The cabin was cold despite the flames. Their breath misted in the air. I'm terrified, Sarah said, voice barely audible, that I'm not enough. That no matter how hard I fight, it won't matter. Wyatt stared into the fire. I know that feeling. She looked at him. Your wife. He nodded. Mary. She died in childbirth. Emma survived. But Mary. His voice cracked. Her family wouldn't let me bury her in their cemetery. Said I wasn't good enough. So I buried her under a cottonwood tree on open land. Just me and a preacher who pitied me. Sarah reached for his hand. He let her. I couldn't save her. Wyatt continued. But I can stand with you. If you'll let me, Wyatt. I know it's too soon. I know you're scared. Hell, I'm scared too. But I also know that some things are worth being scared for. Sarah's eyes filled. What if we fail? Then we fail together. But at least we won't fail alone. The space between them collapsed. The kiss was not passionate, it was tender, hesitant, tasting of wood smoke and hope and fear all tangled together. When they pulled apart, Sarah's hand was still in his. Across the room, Daniel lay awake in his bedroll, eyes open, staring at the ceiling. He'd seen the kiss. His face was unreadable, not anger, but something more complex. A boy watching his mother become a woman again, capable of love after loss. He closed his eyes and said nothing. The storm cleared at dawn. They opened the door to a world buried in white, and the barn's canvas roof torn to shreds. Sarah stared at the wreckage. Weeks of work. Destroyed. She felt something inside her break. Then she walked to the barn, picked up a hammer, and started pulling nails from broken timber. Daniel joined her without a word. Then Jacob, then Wyatt. By midday, they'd salvaged what they could. We rebuild, Sarah said simply. And they did. Daniel rode into Mercy Creek alone. It was early April. The mud season had arrived, turning the streets into rivers of cold slop. He tied the mule outside the livery. Coin purse heavy in his pocket, $12 earned from selling his mother's preserves through Moses, who quietly resold them to sympathetic townspeople. He headed toward the general store. Maybe this time, Dalton would let him in. The alley beside the livery was narrow and shadowed. He didn't see them until too late. Warren Kent's foreman, Jed Murphy, stepped out first. 2 other ranch hands followed. Well, look here, Murphy said, grinning. The widow's boy, all alone. Daniel's hand went to the coin purse. Murphy's eyes followed. That money your mama's, it's ours. Earned honest, Murphy laughed. Honest? That's rich. He nodded to the other men. They grabbed Daniel's arms, shoved him against the wall. Murphy took the coin purse, hefted it. $12, not bad. He leaned close. Tell your mama this is what happens when she forgets her place. They threw him into the mud. Didn't beat him badly, just enough to terrify. A split lip. Torn shirt. Scraped knees. Then they walked away, laughing. Daniel lay in the mud, shaking. Not from pain, from humiliation. He rode home in silence. Sarah saw him coming up the path, the blood on his face, the torn clothes. She ran. Daniel. They took the money. His voice was flat. All of it. Wyatt stepped out of the barn. His eyes went hard. He walked to the cabin. buckled on his gun belt the first time Sarah had seen him wear it. Wyatt, no. Sarah grabbed his arm. That's what they want, an excuse to call you a criminal. They beat a child. And if you shoot them, they'll hang you. Then what Emma loses you. My boys lose you. I lose you. Her voice broke. Please. Wyatt stood rigid, jaw clenched. Then, slowly, he unbuckled the gun belt and set it inside. But his hands shook. That night, Warren Kent called a town meeting at the church. Good people, he began. We must address the moral decay infecting our community. A woman living in sin with a drifter. Children running wild, learning lawlessness. Murmurs of agreement rippled through the crowd. Sheriff Hoskins stood. He was Kent's man. Everyone knew it. Mr. Cole, I suggest you move along. For everyone's safety. Moses Red struggled to his feet. Safety. You beat a child for buying flour and you talk about safety. Sit down, old man. Someone shouted, You call yourselves Christians. Moses's voice shook with rage. You should be ashamed. The room erupted. Shouts, accusations. The crowd turned hostile. Clayton banged his gavel. Order, we must have order. But the seed was planted. The town had chosen its side. Sarah sat on the porch that night, head in her hands. Wyatt sat beside her. You should leave, she said quietly. Take Emma, before they hurt you too. No. Wyatt, I said no. Sarah, I'm not leaving. You've sacrificed enough. I haven't sacrificed anything. His voice was firm. I chose this. I chose you. I chose those boys. And I don't take back my choices just because they get hard. Sarah looked at him, eyes red. What if we can't win? Then we go down fighting, together. But later, alone in the barn. Sarah wept. She wept for Daniel's split lip, for the town's cruelty, for the impossible weight of trying to protect everyone she loved. Outside. Thunder rumbled. Another spring storm rolled in. The barn's canvas roof tore again, ripping free in the wind. Sarah stood in the rain, staring at the wreckage. And for the first time, she wanted to quit. Wyatt found her in the barn at dawn, standing among the ruins. Rain dripped through the broken frame. Her hair hung limp, her shoulders slumped. Sarah! She didn't turn. I can't do this anymore. Yes, you can. No. Her voice cracked. I can't watch my boys get hurt. I can't watch you lose everything because of me. I can't. Wyatt stepped in front of her. You told Daniel that broken things can be made strong. You believe that I don't know anymore. Then I'll believe it for both of us. Sarah looked up, eyes hollow. How? Because you're still standing. Because your boys are still standing. Because we're all still here, still fighting. He took her hand. We rebuild. Not because it's easy. Because it's right. Sarah's knees buckled. Wyatt caught her. She sobbed into his chest, months of fear and exhaustion pouring out. He held her until the storm passed inside and out. When they returned to the cabin, Emma and Samuel were waiting with a piece of paper. We made this, Emma said shyly. It was a drawing, a house, a barn, 6 stick figures holding hands. This is our family. Emma said. Samuel nodded. We don't leave family. Sarah knelt, pulling both children into a hug. No, she whispered. We don't. That afternoon, Moses returned. His wagon was loaded with timber donated by the storekeeper's daughter, the schoolteacher. 2 ranchers who'd grown sick of Kent's cruelty. You're not as alone as he wants you to believe, Moses said. They rebuilt. All 6 working together, plus Moses. Daniel swung the hammer with new confidence. Jacob and Emma measured boards. Samuel handed nails, singing softly, By sunset. The barn frame stood again stronger than before. Sarah and Wyatt stood side by side, hands clasped. watching their children work. In the distance, a wolf howled. Closer. Moses's dogs barked in answer. Pack recognizes pack. The sky turned wrong. Wyatt stepped outside into the eerie stillness. The air tasted metallic. Birds had gone silent. The horizon glowed green-black. Clouds roiling like a living thing. "Twister," he said. Sarah's face went pale. "Where?" "Heading for the valley. Fast." Within the hour, Sheriff Hoskins rode up, hat in hand. "We need every able body. Kent's ranch is in the path. Please." Sarah and Wyatt exchanged glances. They could refuse. Let Kent face the storm alone. Daniel watched his mother, waiting. "Hitch the wagon," Sarah said. At Kent's ranch, chaos reigned, livestock scattered. Men shouted, trying to move equipment, tie down roofs. The twister bore down, a black funnel against the bruised sky. Wyatt worked beside Murphy, the foreman who'd beaten Daniel. A beam collapsed, pinning Murphy's leg. He screamed. Wyatt didn't hesitate. He lifted the beam, dragged Murphy free. Murphy stared up, shocked. "Why?" "Because it's the right thing to do." Wyatt turned away, back to work. Sarah directed the evacuation using storm knowledge her late husband had taught her. The livestock go east, the twisters veering south. They saved the horses, most of the cattle, the main house, when the twister passed. They stood exhausted in the wreckage. Warren Kent approached Sarah slowly. His face was ashen. "Why, after everything I did, why did you help me?" Sarah met his eyes. "Because cruelty answered with cruelty just makes more winter. Someone had to choose spring." Kent looked at the ground. "I thought strength was control. You've shown me I was wrong." Reverend Clayton stepped forward, hat in hand. "I was wrong too. This community was wrong. We confuse self-righteousness with righteousness." He turned to the crowd. "These people showed us what the good book actually means." A woman from the church began to clap. Then another. Then Moses. Soon the whole crowd was applauding, not loudly, but steady. Daniel stood beside his mother. Blood still dried on his lip. Murphy approached, limping. "I'm sorry, son," Murphy said. "What I did was cowardly." Daniel looked at his mother. She nodded. "Apology accepted," Daniel said, "but you owe me $12. Despite everything. People laughed. Murphy pulled out his billfold, handed over the money, riding home at sunset. Sarah sat beside Wyatt on the wagon. The children slept in the back, tangled together. "You could have let Murphy die," Sarah said quietly. "So could you have let Kent fall?" "But that's not who we are." "No." Wyatt agreed. "It's not." Sarah rested her head on his shoulder. "I want our children to know that." "They do," Wyatt said. "They already do." Late May arrived like a promise kept. The homestead bloomed. Wildflowers covered the meadow lupine, Indian paintbrush, wild roses. The garden rows were planted potatoes, beans, squash, carrots. A new chicken coop stood beside the barn, hens clucking contentedly. The barn itself, painted red, gleamed in the sunlight. Inside the expanded cabin, Wyatt had added a room. 6 chairs sat around a table that finally fit everyone, comfortably. Daniel worked at Moses's forge 3 days a week, learning the blacksmith trade. His hands were calloused now, confident. Jacob and Emma remained inseparable, always scheming some new adventure. Samuel spoke freely, his laughter frequent and bright. Sarah's land taxes had been paid anonymously, but everyone knew Moses had quietly organized a collection among those who'd grown consciences. Warren Kent had canceled her debt entirely, publicly, at a town meeting. "I owe this woman and her family more than money can repay," he'd said. The town still had its tensions. Some folks would never change, but enough had softened that Sarah could walk Main Street without locked doors. On a Sunday afternoon, Sarah and Wyatt sat on the porch watching the children play. Wyatt had built a swing in the oak tree. Emma pushed Samuel, both shrieking with joy. Daniel taught Jacob to skip stones in the creek. "Will you let me stay?" Wyatt asked suddenly. Sarah turned. "Where else would you go? I mean, stay. Not as hired help. Not as a partner." He pulled something from his pocket. A ring made from a horseshoe nail, filed smooth and polished. "As family," Sarah's breath caught. "Wyatt, it's not much, but it's honest." She took the ring, slipped it on. Perfect fit. "It's everything." Emma came running up. "Papa, does this mean Sarah's my mama now?" Wyatt looked at Sarah. She knelt, eye level with Emma. "If you'll have me." Sarah said. Emma threw her arms around her neck. Samuel joined, then Jacob, then Daniel slowly, but he joined. Wyatt wrapped his arms around all of them. A family, not by blood, by choice. The next Sunday, Reverend Clayton asked them to stand before the congregation. "These people," he said, voice thick with emotion, "taught me what I should have been preaching all along. Not judgment, but grace. Not exclusion, but embrace." The congregation stood, one by one. Some faces still held reservations, but most showed quiet respect. After the service, Sarah visited Thomas's grave. She placed wildflowers on the headstone. "I hope you'd understand," she whispered. "I think you'd like him." Wyatt stood at a distance, letting her have the moment. Then he visited the memory of Mary, buried far away under a cottonwood. "I'm not replacing you," he said quietly. "I'm learning to live again." That evening, they gathered around the outdoor table for supper. Lanterns glowed. Laughter rose into the warm air. Sarah's hand found Wyatt's on the table, both calloused, both steady. The camera pulled back the homestead, complete and thriving. The barn red against the green valley. The garden lush. 6 figures around the table. Together, in the distance, Mercy Creek. Smoke rising from chimneys. Life continuing. But the focus remained here, on this family, this home. A voiceover rose, warm and steady. "They say the West is won by the strong. But strength isn't the gun or the fist. It's the courage to stand when others won't. To build when others tear down." Sarah Brennan and Wyatt Cole didn't conquer the frontier. They proved that the harshest territory isn't the land, it's the human heart. And even the coldest winter eventually yields to those stubborn enough to believe in spring. The last image Sarah and Wyatt, hands clasped, watching their children play as the sun set gold over the mountains. Home isn't a place. It's the people who stay when the staying gets hard. The end.